Hello, and welcome back to Sonata She Wrote, the channel where we like to get just a little bit theoretical. Today we're discussing Handel's Opus 1, number 14, Sonata for Violin and Continuo in A major. Interestingly, although it was published as being composed by Handel in 1730, likely as a way to improve sales, as Handel was very well known in England, there is some doubt as to who composed this music. I've listed it as being by Handel, and I'm going to refer to it as being by him, because no other candidate for composition has arisen, as far as I know anyway. I've chosen this piece because it's not quite in, and it's not quite out of sonata form. It's more of a proto-sonata than anything else. So let's get started, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So far, this seems more or less like the exposition to a sonata form, with two notable differences. First, the transition. I've labeled it as beginning pickups to bar 3 after the first half cadence, but this label is definitely more transition than it is transition. First, it doesn't quite sound like a new section, which might be fine, as the primary theme is sometimes merged with the transition. But, and this brings us to our second problem, this transition, if it is one, does not modulate to the dominant. It opens up what you might call a medial caesura on a PAC in the tonic. Although it's not impossible for an MC to be a PAC in the tonic key, it would typically indicate that there is some problem with either the primary or secondary themes. Let's continue the exposition and see if that's the case. The secondary theme, if we can call it that, proceeds a bit more normatively than either the primary theme or the transition before it. After a half cadence in bar 9, Handel, or whoever, opens this interesting section which seems to strive towards a cadence in E major, which it does finally manage to reach in bar 12, creating what may or may not be the essential expository closure. This is followed by a brief closing section in the last 2 bars before the next section. This does have a layout similar to an exposition, but I would say the secondary theme is not reflective of any kind of struggle to reach cadence that might have been indicated by the transition and medial caesura sections in the first half of this rotation. This movement is quite short, so I'll play the entire remainder of it, and then we can discuss further. So now you can see, or hear if you will, how this movement really diverges from sonata form. This section, which is not quite development and not quite recapitulation, is pretty far outside the typical sonata box. It's not really a type 1 sonata, which is a sonata with no development section, and it's not quite a type 2 sonata, which is a sonata without either development or recap, but rather a second rotation which includes elements of both. What we are really missing here is the secondary theme. However, there are a number of commonalities between this material and both the development and recapitulation. First, we are beginning in the key of the dominant, E major, which is typical for a sonata form's development. And then, Handel takes us into F sharp minor, the global 6, and comes to a PAC in that key. You may remember that a section in minor 6 with a PAC in that key is one of the few normative options for development. Also here is a structural closure, although I wouldn't quite call it an essential structural closure because the term is pretty exclusive to sonata theory. I would say it is structural. I wouldn't actually use any of these sonata form labels for any of these sections, as I don't think it would be very accurate to say it's in sonata form. It's certainly in dialogue with that form. It is, in my opinion, a precursor to that form, but you likely wouldn't say it was in sonata form. As far as labeling goes, this piece is definitely in a more wibbly-wobbly, even timey-wimey, in-between place. Not quite sonata, not quite not a sonata, but something in between. In any case, it's certainly a piece I've come to love, and if you agree, check out the full recording of all 4 movements elsewhere on my channel.